It's episode number 3 of my series about cruising down the Columbia River on American Cruise Line's newest ship, American Encore. Today we'll go through the locks at 2 different dams, one featuring an 800-ton Guillotine Gate. The day starts in a desert climate, but once we reach our destination at a city in Oregon with an unusual name, we will finally be on the rainy west side of Oregon and Washington with trees and beautiful green hills. This was the view out on my balcony when I woke up a few minutes before sunrise on day number 3 of our cruise. One of the first things I spotted alongside the river was this big group of irrigation pumps. Even though this is a desert landscape here on the east side of Washington, it's fantastic farmland because electricity from the dams powers pumps like those, giving farmers a cheap, abundant source of water. Pretty nice sunrise from my balcony. Earlier this morning, while we were all sleeping, the ship went through the locks at the McNary Dam. And this is going to be an interesting day today because we will be going through the locks at 2 other dams, one this morning and another this afternoon. So there will be lots to see today. As you've seen, we're still looking at dry hills alongside the river. This area on the east side of Washington gets very little rain, but this afternoon we will start to get into the green part of the Pacific Northwest. Anytime you see anything green along this part of the river, it's not getting its water from rain. The water is being pumped to it from the river. All along the river, you can see high-voltage power lines that transmit the electricity generated at the dams up and down the river. In addition to power lines, you'll also see a lot of freight trains, BNSF trains on the Washington side of the river, and Union Pacific trains on the Oregon side. The state line runs down the middle of the Columbia River. Another thing you'll see a lot of in this part of the Columbia River is wind turbines. With warm desert air on the east side of the state and cooler coastal air on the west, you get a lot of wind running through this part of the Columbia River. Now, we'll be sailing on the river most of the day. We won't reach our next destination until about 3 o'clock this afternoon. We're heading down the river towards the Dalles Dam, and the wind is really picking up. You can see a lot of whitecaps on the river, and every now and then they cause some water to splash up through the hole for the anchor chain. Watch right here. It was so windy that no one was up on the sun deck, but a few people bundled up and had their breakfast out on the patio at the back of Deck 4. Around 11 a.m., we arrived at the Dalles Dam. In the background, you can see snow-covered Mount Hood. Although, due to cloud cover, you can only see the base of the mountain. You can't see any of the top. Once we entered the lock, we had a pretty good view of the dam's spillway. It's incredible how much water is passing through here, something like 100 million gallons each minute. While we were entering the lock, a freight train passed by. That was fun to see. I'm a train fanatic. If you browse through some of the other videos here on my YouTube channel, you'll find a lot of model train videos that I've made. I've even got a working model of a BNSF diesel locomotive similar to those two, but without the graffiti. Looking out the back of the ship, we can see the top of the gate rising up behind us. That's going to block off the flow of the river behind us so that the water level inside the lock can be lowered to match the level of the river below the dam. From the front of the ship, we've got a great view of an unusual feature of the lock here at the Dalles Dam. Those 2 big cement towers are part of what's known as the Guillotine Gate. With the lock drained of water, you can see it better. Do you see those big steel cables hanging down from those concrete towers? Those cables are very slowly lifting up the enormous gate in front of the ship. That gate weighs 876 tons. Once it's been lifted up out of our way, our ship will exit the lock by sailing right under it. In this close-up shot, you can see the lifting of the gate a little better. It all happens very slowly, but once that gate is lifted up out of our way, we'll be free to sail out of the lock. Back to the wide shot, if you look right here, you can see the bottom of the gate slowly rising up. It's really a shame that so few people came up here to the sun deck to see this. We've got a little less than 200 passengers aboard, and only about a dozen of us are up here seeing the show. If you look here, you can see we now literally have the green light to go now that the Guillotine Gate has been fully lifted. So the captain sends some power to the engines, and off we go. And as I pan and tilt the camera a little, I'm going to freeze it right here. There, you can really see how this gate looks just like a guillotine. A few minutes after we left the Dalles Dam, I launched the drone in hopes of getting some video of the ship with the Dalles Dam behind it. Hey, how about that? Mission accomplished. Now, this stretch of the river is normally pretty windy, and it definitely was today. You can see some waves bouncing off the ship's bow, but the drone can fly in some pretty steep winds, and I think it did a really good job of getting a very nice shot of American Encore with the dam behind her. I positioned the drone behind the ship in preparation for landing it. Take a look at the hills on either side of the river. You can see that things are a little more green now that we've made our way west far enough to be heading out of the desert landscape and into an area that gets more rain. I'm moving in for the landing now. See that shuffleboard court? I'm going to use that as my target. Landing a drone on a ship that's moving underneath it is very tricky, but I've had a lot of practice on my various ACL cruises, and after a few hard landings, I'm pretty good at it now. It takes a little bit of maneuvering to line things up just right. Be patient with me here for a minute while I position the drone right where she needs to be to land right on that shuffleboard court, and not onto a lounger or a chair or anything like that. Well, I think I've got it just about where I want it. Everything looks good, so let's take her down and land her on the shuffleboard court. You're going to see the camera jerk just before the landing. That's normal. It was just locking itself for landing, and there it is. We're safely down. A few minutes later, another ACL ship passed us as she headed up the river, and we headed down the river. That ship is American Pride, one of the paddle wheelers in the ACL fleet. I had a nice lunch, and then about 2 hours after we left the Dalles Dam, we reached our last dam for today. It's located in a city in Oregon called the Dalles, so this dam is simply called the Dalles Dam. I suspect that tourists driving through the area see the road signs and think it's called the Dalles, but it's not. It's the Dalles. Native Americans lived in this area as long as 10,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest inhabited places in North America. The location along the river made it an ideal trading place. Lewis and Clark camped nearby during their expedition in 1805. Back in those days, long before the dams were built, there was a series of rapids on the Columbia River, and the rapids at the Dalles were the largest rapids on the entire river. Canoes going up or down the river had to completely unload their cargo before reaching the rapids. Then they would move the cargo, as well as the canoe, on land alongside the river until they were past the rapids, and then they could continue on down the river from there. We docked in the Dalles at about 3 in the afternoon, but I didn't get around to shooting any video of the ship at the dock until about 7 o'clock that evening. You can see the weather had clouded over, but the good news was that the winds had died down, and even more importantly, look at those green hills. The Dalles was the first place in our east to west trip down the river where we started to see trees on the hillsides. Because now we're getting into the western part of Oregon and Washington, where they get a lot more rain for most of the year. Also that evening, the ship's guest speaker and historian gave us another talk about Lewis and Clark, and a couple of the ship's officers spoke about new ships that'll be coming out soon and about new itineraries that ACL is offering this year. The next morning, I had a big breakfast in the ship's restaurant, which was delicious, and then I put the drone in the air for a little look around. This was day 4 of our cruise. Our ship will be docked here in the Dalles for most of the day, and today most of the passengers will be going out on excursions to explore the area. Let me show you a map of the Pacific Northwest so you can see where we've been and where we are now. Washington, Oregon, Idaho. Right here is Lewiston, Idaho, where our cruise began. Here's Richland, where we were 2 days ago. And here's the Dalles, where we are today. I want you to notice on the satellite photo how the land is brown in this area and green in this area, and how the Dalles sits right on the transition between dry desert land to the east and green mountains full of trees to the west. So back to the aerial shot, you sure can see a lot more green in those hills now than what we were seeing the last few days. From here on out, for the entire rest of the cruise, we're going to see trees and beautiful greenery everywhere we go. As I was flying the drone, I heard a train horn off in the distance, so I sent the drone over to the Washington side of the river to take a look and got a nice view of this BNSF freight train. And no graffiti on it either. Chasing this BNSF train with my drone reminds me a lot of running my G-scale model trains in my backyard and flying my drone along with the train to get video. When I flew my drone back over to the ship, there was a train over on the Oregon side of the river, too. After a nice lunch aboard the ship, we got onto one of the ACL buses and had a very scenic drive along the river on an excursion to the Bonneville Dam. And this is an excursion I highly recommend. We started by visiting the fish hatchery located right next to the dam. The grounds surrounding the fish hatchery were incredibly beautiful. Even if you have no interest in learning about the types of fish in the river or in seeing a working hydroelectric dam, this excursion is worth it just for these gorgeous views. There are quite a few ponds here, each with a different type of fish in them, so you can get a good look at them and see the differences between each of the varieties. These are rainbow trout here in this pond. There's a little vending machine where for 25 cents you can buy some fish food, toss it in the pond, and watch them go after it. Even though I live along the Columbia River, I'm not a fisherman, so I really don't know much about the fish that are in the Columbia. It was interesting to see them. These are sturgeon here in this pond, and they're really big, much bigger than the trout. This shot does a better job of showing you how big the sturgeon are because there are some people in the shot. I think those sturgeon are longer than the people are tall. There's a little viewing area that's sunken down below the waterline of the sturgeon pond. You can get a look through the glass there and get a good look at the sturgeon up close. It was just really great walking around the grounds of the fish hatchery, enjoying the way they had built these ponds and taking in the beautiful, peaceful atmosphere here. Seeing all the trees and the greenery. It was just such a contrast after spending the first few days of the cruise on the desert side of Washington and Oregon. I loved it. At another part of the grounds of the fish hatchery, they had done some beautiful landscaping with various plants and bushes that flower. Have a look at a very peaceful nature montage. After touring the fish hatchery, we all got back on the bus for a very short ride, just a couple of minutes, over to the visitors center for the Bonneville Dam. Our ship will be going through the locks of this dam tonight while we're all asleep. But this excursion gives us the opportunity to look inside the turbine building where the river water turns the turbines to generate electricity. We also got an up-close look at the fish ladder that allows the fish to get past the dam on their journey up the river. There was even a viewing area with a window so you could look into the fish ladder. I worked at a nuclear power plant for 28 years until I retired, so touring the hydroelectric facilities here at the Bonneville Dam was right up my alley. But even if you know nothing about power generation, I think you'd enjoy this excursion. It's one you really should do if you take a Columbia River cruise with American Cruise Lines. And while we take one last look at where our ship was docked along the Columbia River at the Dalles, I want to just recommend that if you're going to book one of these cruises, you should feel free to use the services of my travel agent. She can really help you make the right choices with flights before and after the cruise. It's tricky flying in to meet the ship at Lewiston because the Lewiston airport is very small. There are very few flights, so there are some better options that my travel agent can help you with. And she can also make sure to set up your travel schedule so that there's enough time for you to do the jet boat excursion into Hell's Canyon before the cruise. My travel agent, Caitlin Gallagher, is not just some newbie getting started. She's actually the owner of one of the top travel agencies for booking American Cruise Lines, Ambrin Travel. So to get started, give Caitlin a call or send her an email or visit her website, whatever you're more comfortable with. That's it for episode number 3 of my video series. Next time, in episode 4, we'll sail from the Dalles down the river to our next destination, Kalama, Washington, where we'll take an excursion to Mount St. Helens. But listen, I've got some news. I'm going to have some surgery a few days from now, and it's going to take me a while to recuperate because it's a nasty one, prostate surgery. So I am definitely not going to be able to have the next episode ready for you to watch a week from now. I may or may not be able to have the next episode ready 2 weeks from now. I just don't know how long it'll be after this surgery before I'll be able to sit at my desk for hours and hours of video editing. I'll get you the next episode when I can. That's all I can promise. Leave me some encouraging words in the comments if you'd like. I'm Jim Zim. Thanks for watching.